All right, so for topic 2, we're now going to continue where we left off, but talk less about the matrix itself and more about the elements within the matrix and how we label and call those numbers or variables, as the case may be. So let's take a look at the canvas. It looks just like we left it in topic 1. Now remember, the elements are what I have underlined in red. So it's the numeric or the variable information that is within the matrix. We want to have a way of being able to talk about those numbers without having to just say, oh, you know that number 9 over there. We want something more specific, because let's say, for instance, I say, okay, do you see the 0 on my screen? Depending on where your eyes are looking at this particular time, you might be looking at the 0 that's in matrix A, or you might be looking at either of the zeros that are in matrix C. So being able to be more specific is important. I'll erase our little arrows here and talk about that. So starting with, actually let's start with the 0 in matrix A and say, how would we label that? Well, first, we need a way to say that it's in A, not in B or C. So the first thing that we write is the 0 is it's an element in matrix A. When I mean an element, I use a lowercase letter. So the matrix is capital A, but an element inside A is lowercase a. Now 0 in A is the second row in the second column. And so again, I think in terms of drawing the letter L, and I say this is in the second row and the second column. So A22 is 0. Now let's take a moment to think about that, and then let me kind of test our knowledge up against the 0 positions in matrix C. So that's here and here. The first 0, this one over here in C, we are going to call by a small lowercase c, because the element is in matrix C. Then we want to draw our L, and we go down and we say it's in the second row and in the first column. So I write 2 for second row and 1 for first column. And so it will be true that C21 is equal to 0. How is that different for the second 0? Well, we still want to call this an element in C, so I'm using a lowercase c. We would make our L, we start up here, we go down 2 rows, and across 1, 2, 3 columns. So this is element C2, 3, row 2, column 3, and that is also 0. So taking a moment to take that in, looking at how those compare, I want you to give yourself a second to decide how would you call the element -3 in matrix B. So take a moment to jot that down on your paper before I do it. Think about rows and columns. Think about what letter we would use to call an element from this matrix. And then I will do the same. So starting out, write that down. I'm just trying to stall so you have time. Okay, so element of matrix B would be a lowercase b. Then position-wise, we're going to start up here and draw our L, go down 1, 2 rows, and across 1 column. So it's row 2, column 1 is -3. And that is how we talk about the elements of a matrix. So we use the same kind of L drawing strategy to talk about elements that we use to talk about the size of a matrix. So that's nice and consistent. We use the same method to talk about size as we do about position. And then it's also important to remember that an element is called by a lowercase letter that corresponds with the matrix, the capital letter that we use to call each matrix. Now, if we have a default So if for some reason we only have one matrix and because of that they didn't, like in a worksheet, perhaps they didn't actually give the matrix a letter, most often we default to A. So if you see just a lowercase a with a subscript 2, 1, like so little a, 2, 1, you can assume that what they mean is I'm looking for the element of the 1 matrix on this page. So just like in other areas of algebra, we default to using x and y as the most common variable. We also default to using a lowercase a when we're talking about elements of a matrix. And we also default to using a capital A, usually, when we're talking about like naming a matrix. So there is a little bit more information. We have one more topic where I'm going to talk about where these numbers come from. Why would we actually end up using a matrix to organize information anyway? So you can wrap up this video and look at that last one before you try out your worksheet.